Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of DIY Money.
DIY Money.
I sat in the bad chair today. This mic, every time we're here, is just horrible.
The mic is fine.
So let's
people just like to complain.
So
Allie and Quint like to complain, and
it is
what it is.
Chair?
Yeah, it's fine.
You walked a mile in these shoes. We're gonna put you in this chair after. I feel like I'm just gonna hold the mic up. Ain't no thing.
What's going on in your world, Howard?
I'm just getting fired up for Banjo's first party.
Oh my gosh.
First party. Probably.
Our dog's first birthday party. I know we have talked about this on the episodes before. You're an entertainer, so you throw down, you do all the things. So our dog's name is Banjo. I think I've already said this, but we have a Western themed party. So I'm doing, it's actually pretty cool. You know, when you go to like a sports game and they have the little boxes where you put nachos in?
Yeah.
So we got those boxes and we have nachos.
That's
and
fire.
I did pulled pork and mac and cheese and all the things. So it should be pretty good. I'm excited.
Can't wait.
I enjoy the entertaining part of it. Hannah, my wife, truly enjoys celebrating Banjo. She is so fired up about celebrating the dog's first birthday.
It is a high priority on my Saturday. I will be party hopping that day from my uncle and aunt's 50th wedding anniversary.
Oh my.
Incredible. Then I'm going straight to Banjo's party, have to make an appearance.
Of course.
Then I'll be throwing my own party that evening.
And of all of those, the 1-year-old puppy birthday is by far the most important.
Sorry, Caroline.
Okay, let's get to our housekeeping odds and ends. Let's take a quick break for our sponsors. All right, send those questions. Send your questions into podcast@DIYmoney.org. That's podcast@DIYmoney.org. If we use your question on the show, you'll get a $25 Amazon gift card. So make sure you send those in. Check us out on the socials.
Minute or less.
Minute or less, yes,
Sometimes
very good.
People come on. Us their
minute
whole
or less,
story.
and it has to be an audio question. So make sure you record it and put it on an audio question and send it in to us. And if we use it on the show, like I said, you'll get a $25 Amazon gift card. Follow us on the socials, DIY Money Podcast on all the socials out there, and follow the DIY Money Daily, where you can get daily market news of what's going on in the world, what's happening, and you can subscribe directly on our website, DIYmoney.org. Okay, let's get to our question today. Who's our question today from?
From Nina.
Nina, what do you got?
Hi, DIY Money. I love your podcast and I've learned so much over the years. My name is Nina. I'm 33 and I live in Seattle. I would love to know more about SEP IRAs and if you think it would be a good choice for me and my business. I've been self-employed for 3 years, running my own jewelry repair shop. It's going really well and I'm about to hire my first full-time employee. I also bought a house 3 years ago and my interest rate is 6%. I'm on track to make about $120K this year. My Roth is maxed out, my emergency fund is good, and I don't have any debt except the mortgage. I'm about to have a lot of extra margin. Should I open a SEP IRA, or pay more to my mortgage, or invest more in my business to buy tools and training, or what should I do with my extra money?
Nina's crushing it.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Holy cow. First, let's start with our legal caveats. You laughed, you knew I was going to do this. Nina, we cannot give you personal financial advice. I can give you some rules of thumb, and we'll talk a little bit about what it means to be self-employed. But I would say this is a great pain moment. You've got extra margin. Your business is on the ground. It's starting to make a lot of income. You likely need to reach out to a tax advisor or a financial advisor to just get some more details on your situation. Because as much as I'd love to answer your question in 15 minutes, it also really does depend on your goals, on what other income you might have, on how long you might be doing the business, on what other employees you have, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
We love you enough, Nina, to say we will not answer your question. But let me give you some broad brushstrokes. So what stuck out to me in this question first was the income side for self-employment. Now, you didn't say this in your question, but as a general rule of thumb, we usually, when you get above the threshold that you can start paying yourself what you'd be considering a reasonable salary. Now, what I mean by that is if you found someone who did your exact job as a W-2, what would they probably make? When you're at that point, it might make sense to talk to a tax expert, because if you're not already filing that as a business return, separated from your own. So if it's going on Nina's return, it's a sole proprietorship or an LLC. If it's a separate return and it's passing through income, there's some tax advantages to that. So we've talked about that. That's called S-Corp election. I think we've done a couple podcasts on it. If you aren't able to find those, go on our website. You can search our different episodes, you can likely find that, and we break down that in a lot more depth. So I'll kind of throw out that softball and leave it there, but make sure you're doing that. In terms of the retirement plan, which is what I'll talk on a lot, and maybe Logan, you can touch on some of the margin questions and when do we pay more on the mortgage and the brokerage account. From the retirement plan, it really is going to be based on your long-term goals of the business, in my opinion, and going to be based on how many employees you have and how much income you want to defer. So what's nice about being self-employed is you have more retirement plan options than just the traditional IRA or the Roth IRA that most people who are employed and are W-2 workers have access to. You can do a numerous amount. The most common are probably the SEP, which you mentioned, and I'll touch on in a moment. A simple IRA, which I don't think is all that simple, but that's just what they're called. And then sometimes you can look at setting up a solo 401k or maybe even a 401k, depending on your income. As we dissect that, a lot of the reasoning behind what we pick as financial advisors comes down to income and how much you need to defer off of your income. And that's usually the starting point. So if you only need to defer a few $1,000s to hit your financial goals, maybe we're not going to get too complicated and you might use a traditional or a Roth and call it a day, depending on your income. Then you get into more than that $7,000 or $8,000 threshold for direct contributions because you have income. The SEP is a little bit unique because the SEP has to be the same percentage that you contribute for all your employees because a SEP is done on the employer side. Now, that's really confusing because you are the employer. But as far as the IRS is concerned, your business, and you didn't name it. So, Nina, you get to sell piñatas. That was the first thing I thought of. Why not? If you're selling that is the business. And so you are Piñatas LLC. That's the business. Nina is the employee. So the business would take the expense, the business would run the plan, and because of that, you have to have the same percentage for every employee. Now, if it's just you and your spouse, there's a little caveat in there. Sometimes you can do that. If you're really wanting to go in and designate different percentages for different employees, then they say, well, it has to be fair, which means on the employee side, you can contribute a certain percentage, but then on the employer side, they have to match the same percentage. So that structure is a little bit closer to a simple IRA. So as a broad answer to this question, I'd say if you think it would just be you for a while and you're in that position as a business, a SEP might make sense because you can get the business deduction for that. And it's a little bit easier to set up, that kind of thing. When it starts to get more complicated and you don't want to necessarily contribute for everyone the same exact way from an employer perspective, it might make sense to look at something like a simple IRA or explore a solo 401k or even put in something a little bit more elaborate with the 401k and some of the rules that kick in there. So those are really broad starting points. But again, if you're listening and you're in a scenario where you're looking to set up a self-employment plan, in my opinion, it really makes sense to talk to someone. And it doesn't need to be us, but just make sure someone with an understanding of the taxes and the legality and the retirement plan rules is looking at your situation and figuring out the nuance. Because what's a pain in the butt is if you set up a SEP and then in 2 years, you're now ditching the SEP and setting up something else and setting up something else. So sometimes you really want to be forward-looking.
So she mentioned that she's about to bring on the first employee that's going to come on. And if that's not your spouse, you're probably going to have to change from a SEP IRA plan in a 2-year time window. They give you some leeway once you bring on a new employee, but you're probably going to have to switch within 2 to 3 years to a different type of plan. A couple of the caveats: a simplified employee pension. That's why we're talking about a SEP IRA. The reason it's an employer is because it's a pension, and pensions historically are funded by the employer, and that's what you're basically doing with a SEP IRA. So you can give 25% of someone's salary to the SEP IRA, but you have to do it the same. So if you give yourself 25% of your salary that goes into this simplified employee pension, you have to also do the exact same thing for an employee that is making 25% of their income into this account, which is a significant portion. And that's why most of the time, unless you're a solo run business, you don't even consider the SEP IRA whatsoever. The simple, like you said, Allie, I think is probably going to make a lot more sense if you need to knock down income. There's the trigger point is look at your tax brackets. We talk about this all the time when we're talking about Roth IRAs or where money should go. Look at where your tax bracket is currently. Is this a business where you feel like fast forward in 3, 4, 5 years, you're going to be in a significantly higher tax bracket in the future than you are right now? If that's the case, I would pursue maybe some of the other things you mentioned, like putting into a joint investment account, just building up some extra liquidity, or continuing to fund the Roth IRA. Or you could even go to more, you could navigate a different road, go down the simple IRA path that Allie talked about. Simple IRA, I think the contribution limits are right around $17,000. There's some caveats to that, but $17,000 can go in for your employee side. Again, it's you for both of them, but can go in for your side, and then the quote unquote business or employer can do a 3% match. So a simple IRA makes a lot of sense. And they just now added a Roth option. So you could do a simple IRA Roth contributions if your income is low now and will go up in the future, and maybe sock away a little bit more money in the Roth in these early years of the business. And then as it grows, switch to a traditional or a pre-tax side. That's how I think about it. Now, they also mentioned putting into their mortgage and paying down on the mortgage. The mortgage payoff is normally a psychological question more than a math question. Because the math would say, take the deduction on your taxes, take down your income level, don't pay as much, and also get a match on the amount of money that goes into the simple IRA. However, if your big desire and your number one thing on your financial goal list is to get your mortgage paid off, because we've talked before, having a mortgage paid off like Quint does has made him a better investor to take care of opportunities over time, well, then maybe you pursue that. But that needs to be an evaluation of your goals, less an evaluation of the math, because the math is not going to tell you to pay your house off. The math is going to say, okay, we should be putting into one of these plans or the other, or a joint account or whatever it might be.
Often, yeah.
So there's a lot of different stages to evaluate there. I think the key thing to focus on, like you said, first of all, is get some outside assistance, get some help. But consider, where is the business going? If the business is going to continue to grow and continue to bring on employees, I think a SEP IRA is not really a good choice. I would pursue something along the lines of a simple IRA, or if it continues to grow and you add more and more employees, you get to the point of a normal 401k plan. Not a solo 401k, because you're not solo anymore, you have employees, but a traditional 401k plan that you pursue in the future. And in the meantime, maybe you just use the IRA as a traditional or a Roth IRA, depending on your income levels, and then go from there with a brokerage account if you just want to have some extra savings. The best thing too, the last thing I'll mention, best thing about a joint account or a brokerage account or an individual account if you're not married, is that you can sock money away there, and then you can make decisions about what happens with that money in the future.
Yes.
So if you really want to pay your house off, maybe you consider putting it into a brokerage style account, taxable account. There's all these different words for it. Let that money grow, whether it's in risk-free assets or in the market, and then go and pay off that mortgage whenever you're able to pay off the whole balance.
Yeah. The other key, too, as you're deciding all of these moving targets at once, is having a full financial plan, because to me, a lot of the main principle of your question comes down to liquidity. Mm-hmm. And so do you need those funds before that typical 59.5? If so, maybe it makes sense to keep those a little bit more liquid in something like a brokerage account. Are you concerned with your long-term stability in this company? If so, maybe you don't want to pay off the mortgage because you want to have that cash accessible if this company next year isn't as profitable and you need to make ends meet. So it really is kind of juggling a lot of different things, which is where it might be helpful to just get some more context with an advisor.
That's exactly right. All right, we're going to wrap it up there, friends. The secret to wealth is really very simple. Live on less than you make, invest the rest. Do so for a very long time. Make it a great one.